I also find that it's a good technique for me when I'm stumped on something and when I can't make the next step, I sleep on it. And it's amazing how just sleeping and letting go of it, my subconscious can sometimes solve it. I wake up the next day and I have a beginning or an answer or a start. So sometimes we don't have to be responsible for the energy or even doing it. It's almost going to be done for us or with us by some sort of an intuition or whatever we believe about a higher power. We get help from places we don't even perceive.
I heard it through the grapevine.
Welcome. It's the AA Grapevine half-hour variety hour featuring the collected voices of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll be frank, I'm an alcoholic in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Hi, Frank.
No, Don.
Oh, hi, Don.
I'll be honest.
Well, honestly, I'm Sam, an alcoholic. I'm in Palm Springs, California.
Are you rigorously honest or are you brutally honest?
I am mischievously honest.
Mischievously honest. Before I got sober, I had trouble with relationships, couldn't control my emotions, and I was filled with misery and despair.
Well, it sounds like maybe some of the bedevilments.
I think it is the bedevilments.
Can I have some points for that answer?
2,000 points!
Thank you. Gosh, getting recognition here. I need some warm glow. Okay.
That's good. I heard this explanation in a meeting about the difference between rigor, because I often hear people say, I need to be brutally honest, as if they're quoting the big book. But it doesn't say we're brutally honest. It says we're rigorously honest. And someone in a meeting said that rigorous honesty was when I used the truth to expose myself.
Okay.
Brutal honesty is when I use the truth to expose others.
I had not heard those distinctions, and that's a great way to describe those two things. So often someone's saying they're going to be rigorously honest, but they're being brutal. And another part of all that, too, I can be rigorously honest. I can even be brutally honest with folks that I've got permission to be brutally honest with.
Like your sponsees.
Exactly.
I give my sponsor permission to be brutally honest.
Exactly.
With me. I want him to expose the truth about me.
Well, yeah, and my sponsor doesn't do that. Right. There's no intention of mean. It's done with love.
But where you don't want to do that is outside of an AA relationship, like with my wife. It doesn't work to be brutally honest with my wife. People outside of AA, they don't want you taking their inventory. I've noticed.
Well, Don, there's a lot of people in AA that don't want you taking their inventory either, and you don't have permission.
If I want to live well in any relationships, this is something I had to learn. You just don't blurt out things about other people that you're thinking.
And my experience of learning things like this, it takes time. It's always taken time. It's kind of like with my first sponsor, when I would meet with her and it's like, well, yep, I was a jerk to Greg. Then I'd come back a week later and yep, I was a jerk to Greg. And then I would catch myself right before I was going to be a jerk. And then while I'm being a jerk and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, but that is the growth that slowly happens. And hopefully at some point I'll be able to check my behavior before I behave.
Yeah, that's
Wait
deep.
a minute. No, well, you know what I mean.
I liked that. We're going to have to add that to hashtag heard in a meeting.
Yeah. There's a new book that Grapevine has published called Forming True Partnerships.
This collection of Grapevine stories shows the many ways members use the 12 steps, sponsorship, and the tools of the program to improve and repair their relationships.
It's got colorful stories on families, friendships, marriage,
divorce, dating, romance,
co-workers, sponsorship, and pets.
Forming True Partnerships covers a wide range of experience from sober alcoholics, all about how we form true partnerships with others.
You can get it at aagrapevine.org. Who's our guest today?
Well, today we're going to have some fun on the podcast. And, we always have fun, but today, woohoo! We've got a rollicking game of Stump the Thumpers, our big book quiz show. Our guest is Jeff W. from Athens, Greece. Oh, excuse me, Athens, Georgia. We'll get to know him a bit and then play our game.
I have met Jeff before. I'm looking forward to meeting him again. I understand that he was once an inebriant.
You mean a rum hound?
He was well oiled.
Bog-faced.
Precisely. To put it in plain and simple language, he's a dipsomaniac.
Are you sure?
Yes, nobody joins AA for fun, Sam.
But we find the fun once we get in here
It's
and
in
stay.
here. Woo-hoo-hoo! But first,
The news. AA.org has posted a frequently asked questions page about the 2025 International Convention and Travel in Vancouver, Canada, July 3rd through the 6th of 2025. The page provides information on everything about the convention, including travel restrictions and where to get help. Go to AA.org and search for International Convention FAQ.
No Matter What, Dealing with Adversity and Sobriety is a Grapevine book full of powerful stories of AA members about using the tools in the fellowship to get through the tough times in sobriety. It includes helpful stories about illness, divorce, financial loss, death of a child or sponsor, house fires, and more. Great for members going through difficult times. Find it under Books in the Grapevine store, online, or in the app.
My name's Jeff. I'm an alcoholic. I currently live in Athens, Georgia. My sobriety date is November 14th, 1983, and I'm really happy to be here.
So, you've already met Don, and you still agreed to come on and be a guest. Don must have been on his best behavior.
He was. It was at the regional forum, and we heard all about it. And he even asked a great question.
Oh, you were there where my sponsor sent me up there.
Way to go, Kenneth.
That's right. So, Jeff, what was going on with you in 1983 that made you come to an AA meeting of all things?
Well, I had actually been through treatment in 1980. I was pretty familiar with AA because my father got sober in 1974. I was about 17 at the time, and my family life radically changed because he was suddenly, well, it wasn't quite sudden. It took a few months, but he changed. He was the father that I think he always wanted to be. Mm-hmm. It was a real transformation. And it was not pretty at first. These AA guys would come around our house and help him whenever, he was in a bad place. And I loved the fact that they would show up and they told interesting stories. One of them had gotten sober in 1942, and everybody loved to hear him talk. I just loved, I was a very cynical alcoholic at the time myself.
How old were you?
17. I'd already started on my own journey. I was not trusting anything anyone said, especially about spirituality but these guys had this authentic spirituality that I really enjoyed hearing about. And they were altruistic, just like it says in the doctor's opinion, an altruistic movement. And I was on the lookout for what do they want? What are they going to try to do?
Do I have
to write them a check or whatever? And they just showed up and helped, so I had a very good feeling about AA from both seeing my father's recovery and seeing these people that he was part of.
That's really interesting that at 17 years old, you were already identified, at least to yourself, as an alcoholic. And you were hanging out at home when these people would come around?
Yeah, I would be back from college or hanging around. They came regularly, a lot of Sundays.
So drinking was not a problem for you at that point, I suppose.
No, I used a lot of drugs, and that was my way of not being like my father because I had sworn I was not going to be like him. But the drugs were just sort of an on-ramp to drinking, and that was really my ticket to freedom. That's what it felt like for me. So I didn't feel like I had a problem. I felt like alcohol was opening me up. I was a writer, fancied myself as a creative person. And my father's drinking always felt like he was a business guy. He'd have martinis at lunch and all that. That was nothing like my drinking. I drank like, wine with poets and writers. And, I would read biographies of writers and then drink what they drank because I thought that was the way to write like they wrote.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
I understand that way of thinking. I'm an artist, and my models were other artists. Modigliani died of alcoholism back in an alley, but his art dealer would take care of him and come pick him up and clean him up and give him a little money and get him to go do some painting, and then, kind of take care of him so he could buy some more wine. I was thinking, man, that's the life, isn't it?
That's a little insanity, isn't it?
Yes. I idolized the beat poets and writers, and Kerouac drank himself to death, I believe, and loved Eugene O'Neill. I loved Long Day's Journey into Night because I felt like that's my family. And I thought anybody who can turn all their pain into great theater, that's what I want to be doing as a playwright. And my professors were all, heavy drinkers, or the ones I gravitated to. So we'd be sitting around drinking Irish whiskey out of the bottle and talking about poetry and drinking wine with my poetry teacher, or, with one of my other teachers, Warren. He was kind of a hippie guy. And I liked, that was how drinking was so different for me. And it was nothing like my father's thing. So it wasn't until I started doing the things that he used to do that
For example,
like wrecking cars, just not showing up and being undependable, being vicious, turning on people. I was starting to be this person that I, had sworn I would never be. But I still, stalled. It was really my father who spoke to me. He took me out for lunch. He kind of just told me a little of his AA story. And he said, I've been noticing you seem to have a lot of unhappiness caused by drinking, and you may have this thing that I have. It's often in families, and maybe you should think about going to the treatment center I went to and seeing if they can enlighten you about anything like that.
Wow. Hadn't you heard that before?
A little bit from a writing teacher. It really pissed me off. In my evaluation, he actually put about my drinking and how, he would be a good writer if he could focus and get things done. But because of his drinking, he never does.
The nerve.
Your alcoholism wound up on your permanent record.
That's right. That's right. And this guy was getting drunk with me half the time. It really freaked me.
So was that conversation with your father, was that the moment that you decided to go to treatment, or?
I decided right then because my life was not going well. And I really was feeling that incomprehensible demoralization. I just said yes. I think it's part higher power.
Was that it?
No. And I went through treatment, and I was actually trying to be honest with myself. I took that little test they give you. This one had 20 questions. I got 17 yes out of 20. But I thought, I'm in the clear. I got 3 more, and until I even need to think about this, And then they tell you at the end, no, if you answered 3 or more yes, you're probably an alcoholic. Like, why didn't you tell me that before I took the test?
If you think you might have a problem with alcohol, you have a problem with
alcohol. It's pretty likely. Yeah.
That's true. And I learned a lot about the effects of alcohol, the physical part I paid attention to. But I really did not buy the whole higher power thing. I felt like I could manage this. I was really somebody who believed that mentally I had a defense. I could think my way out of this. I always had. So thank you for all those good facts. And I will go to your meetings once in a while. I'm not going to get a sponsor because I don't want to be honest with anybody about that. And I don't want to do a lot of the things you do, like service, like picking up ashtrays or chairs or anything like that. But I'll go once in a while.
You learned what the problem was, but you didn't want to do any part of the solution.
Exactly. Yes. So I made it 4 months and then drank again. And it was almost instantly terrible. I was around my parents at that time. I mean, my father I'm sure he was so crestfallen that maybe he thought that I was going to get this. And then I was just back to being a drunk again. And it was really a couple more years of being in and out of AA. And I went to a meeting and somebody said my name. I was over by the coffee pot. I thought, oh no, I don't want to know who this is. But it was one of my writing teachers, the guy Warren. And he was exactly the right person to help me because he wouldn't buy into any of my, I'm a writer and I have to drink stuff, And he was a much better writer than me. And he just knew all of my BS because he'd read these thinly veiled stories that I wrote. So, and he was loving and kind, but also tough. He really got me into the steps. At that time, my father he had been diagnosed with liver cancer. So he'd been sober 8 years, but it kind of caught up with him, the old life. And so Warren helped me through how difficult that was.
You stayed sober?
I know I drank again over self-pity about my father dying. And it just is the nature of alcoholism that I would do that, because the one thing my father wanted for me was for me to stay sober. And then I drink over him dying.
But that's what we alcoholics do. I mean, it got wired into my thinking that this is a solution.
Yes. And so I drank a couple more times and the results were always the same. And they got really fast. Like the first time I would drink, it would be the blackout, the disaster, the trouble, the mess. Sometimes I used to be able to make it a few weeks but now it was just painfully clear. So when I finally, in November, woke up from another drunk, it wasn't the worst one. But it was just so clear that you absolutely can't do this by yourself. And it was steps 1, 2, and 3 all together, because I really had to admit, okay, I conceded to my innermost self, I am an alcoholic. I can't handle this myself. I need to do whatever is asked of me, whatever Warren and the group asks. And that's the only way I'm going to have a decent life. It's the only way I'm not going to be dead by 30 or miserable and making everybody around me miserable. And it was clear enough, although I had no confidence that I could do it.
Complete surrender.
Yeah, it has lasted 41 years. So I guess something happened then.
Yeah. Jeff, earlier on, you said that you fancied yourself a creative person. I know that you're a very creative person. I've seen you've written AA plays that are hilarious, lots of quotes of the big book and different things in AA. Just a wellspring of creativity. Did you lose your creativity? For me, my creativity was all wrapped up in my drinking. And when I quit, I felt like that's going to be the end for me. What's your story with that?
Very similar. Although alcohol had already taken my creativity away from me, really. I was not able to do much of anything. And it really took time to say, focus on your recovery and the rest will come. Also, I had gotten a job at an ad agency, so I had to be somewhat creative for work. That was a good way to show up and just do something, do my best if I could, and learn some kind of discipline so that when I came back to be creative for myself, like the kind of work I really wanted to do, then I had some of those grooved behaviors. I kind of knew how to do it. It wasn't necessary for me to drink to be able to do it. But it definitely took me time, and I still didn't believe it was going to be possible. And it was very helpful to have Warren as a sponsor because he went through it with me and he knew what I was going through. And he was like, just be patient. Don't worry about it. It'll come back. And the kind of things that I've learned in the program about consistency, trust the process, just show up and do what you've been taught to do and don't judge it. Take it a day at a time. You don't have to finish everything. It got so when I was drinking, I could barely write like a haiku before I would be too drunk to even hold a pen. And now it was like, just do a page, just do a chapter, or just do one thing, one scene, whatever.
Bird by bird.
Exactly. And I love that author and how she writes about creativity as well.
That's Ann L.
I know there are a lot of alcoholics out there who fear that if they hang up the drinking and perhaps the drugs or whatever, that they're going to lose their creativity. It has not been the case for me. It's also good that I am involved in theater because of all the kinds of writing I've done. That pushes me to be with people. Like I can write a play, but it doesn't do anything for anyone. It's just words on a page. It has to be brought to life by other people. So I have to pull them in. I have to say, hey, you want to do a reading and then gather 15 or 10 people. For a lot of the AA stuff I do, it's all alcoholics, and they're all there to support me and make it more creative and make it more funny. Rule 62 is always in play, where I just don't take myself too seriously. So I get a lot of help with just keeping it going.
Well, I could hear in the way that you talk and express yourself that you've read the big book. You just threw out, just out off the top of your head, incomprehensible demoralization a moment ago. Normal people don't talk like that, Jeff.
And so what Don is alluding to here is you're about to be put into a situation where you're not going to have the help of others. It's time to play
Stump the Thumpers. That's a big book.
And here is our quizmaster, Donnie Wani Ding Dong. I am never going to say Donnie Wani Bonnie, Don.
Thanks, Spammy. So I've researched the first 164 pages of the big book.
And Dr. Bob's story.
Sam, let's keep this simple. I found a few easy questions for our contestant.
Easy, Easy. It's only easy if you know the answer.
And it's multiple choice. It's as easy as falling off a stool.
Is that a bar stool you're thinking of?
There was a time it took a little bit of effort to stay on the bar stool. What is Jeff going to win, Sam?
The warm glow of accomplishment.
I can feel the glow. Ooh. Okay, I got 3 questions, Jeff. Guess right, and you'll gain 2,000 points.
That's a lot of points. But Jeff is an alcoholic.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but my dopamine receptors are exhausted. I need lots and lots and lots of encouragement.
There's never, ever enough points. Jeff, I know you think you are, but are you really ready to play?
I'm ready to get some points, so however I can do it.
Well, the road may get rocky, but as I've learned time and again, especially working with Don, the only way out is through.
Sam, I'm through with you. No, I'm not. Okay, Jeff, first question. What is the root of our troubles? I'm going to give you 4 choices. 1, drinking. 2, selfishness, self-centeredness. 3, enthusiasm. 4, our husband or wife.
While several of the answers are attractive, I think it's the selfishness and self-centeredness, number 2.
Ding, 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 ding. The answer is on page 62, selfishness, self-centeredness. That, we think, is the root of our troubles.
Question 2. Sam's going to read a big book quote.
On page 67, it says, fear. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it.
Fear is underneath everything. No comment.
Or were you afraid that we weren't going to say anything? And the bead of sweat that showed up just was like,
I'm afraid there's going to be dead air.
I'm fearful right now of the next question, so I can identify with all this.
Well, okay, so this idea that an evil and corroding thread, the fabric of our existence, was shot through with it gave me
a dastardly, devious little side quest.
Yes. What does the expression shot through mean? 1, splattered. 2, interspersed. 3, pierced by arrows.
Well, it sort of felt like, what was number 2 again?
Interspersed.
I feel like shot through is sort of like it's all throughout it.
Woo-hoo-hoo!
Somebody who drank a lot of shots.
Ding, ding, ding. That's the answer. And I love this because I learned this in a home group that I used to share with Don that had a dictionary from the time that the big book was published. We looked up odd phrases and words and such. This is where I learned from the Oxford English Dictionary, shot, speaking of fabric, woven so as to show different colors at different angles, interspersed with different color.
Okay.
Yeah, so those iridescent fabrics are shot through with a thread.
I'm picturing it.
And I'm not surprised that a wordsmith would be able to, even if you didn't know for certain, you were able to put two and two together on that one and just.
I guess. I almost went for the arrow, though.
All right. Well, you're doing pretty well, Jeff.
You know, you're at 4,000 points already.
All right. It's almost substantial unanimity if I get 2 out of 3. It's good enough for AA. It's good enough for me.
Let's see if you can get this one. On page 75, it says, "We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark blank of the past." Fill in the blank with one of these choices. Every dark. 1. Cavern. 2. Cavity. 3. Cranny. 4. Cabaret.
Cabernet.
No, not get your mind off the wine. Cabaret.
It's number 3, Cranny.
Ding, ding, ding! Ding, ding! Woo! On page 75 in Into Action, it says, "We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past." That's it, Jeff. You got it.
Love those dark crannies.
6,000 points.
All right.
You got to go in those dark crannies and find the fear and root it out.
That's right.
Pull that shot, pull that thread, right?
That cranny has to be smashed. Smashed. How many points did Jeff get?
Oh, I'm going to say at least 12,000.
That's because he got all 3, which meant double.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm a treasurer for 2 different entities. That's a really scary thing, how I handle numbers, right?
There's that creativity working in there. Creative accounting.
Jeff, this has been great. You do get the warm glow. You've given me a warm glow.
I'm glad.
And I'm basking in the radiation from both of your. Oh, wait, that's just my monitor.
Basking in the radiation.
I have to say, I love the podcast. Every week, you guys make me glow. And I love that what you're doing for Grapevine. I mean, you know, telling people about books that we may not remember, that, you know, focus on these areas like what you had mentioned about, you know, and relationships and or sponsorship, you know, that we can go to a bunch of stories that are going to, you know, kind of illuminate that for us. Or Emotional Sobriety is one of my favorite Grapevine books because there isn't too much about it. It's certainly not in the big book, but it's you know, all these AA members who have contributed stories over the years into these areas. You know, the one about amends was also great because you see in the big book it writes about, you know, it gives us some stories like, you know, the guy who, you know, had betrayed his partner and fessed up in church or whatever. And a book of stories about just how it's done was so helpful to me because it is really a very individual thing. And I need that kind of Grapevine angle on, like, you know, here are a bunch of diverse stories from different alcoholics that are going to help you in this area of your recovery. And I guess that's why I love Grapevine and why I love the podcast.
Good. Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. And those books, kind of like going to a workshop weekend on a specific thing.
Yes.
You mentioned in books, one of my favorite ones is the one on meditation. There's not a lot in the big book or the 12 and 12, any of the literature about meditation. And it's the experience of about 20 people.
Yeah. And one big tent, the experience of atheists and agnostics, and listening to how different people work the steps differently, even if they don't have a maybe traditional belief in a higher power or any belief, they still do service and work steps. And it was fascinating to me to read those stories.
Well, I wish we could start a little book club right here, but we've got to end it.
Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you.
Oh, great pleasure as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the Grapevine magazine in print or in the AA Grapevine app. Your support makes this podcast possible.
I'm at the very wit's end. Cuckoo.
This one submitted by Jack A.
A real controlling drunk walks into a bar and orders everyone around.
It's really not that funny. Thanks for joining us. The AA Grapevine Half-Hour Variety Hour is posted every Monday and is produced by AA Grapevine, Inc. We don't speak for AA as a whole. We share the experience, strength, and hope of members to help others recover from alcoholism. All things Grapevine are available at aagrapevine.org, including our app and how to get in touch with us. Find us on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to know more about AA, visit aa.org or search online for Alcoholics Anonymous and your city.